Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to my library tour, a little bit delayed. My visual record of all the books that I have at the start of 2022. Not this particular library. We've already done this library, haven't we? Those are all old friends. Instead, we're going through, for a little while anyway, the Library of the Lost. We're going through books of mine that I no longer have, but that I once did. And I've set up this whole new arrangement and tested it, and as far as I can tell, the pictures will be just fine. They'll be just visible. So the first one is a book called Trash Animals. We have two pigeons on the cover there, and this is all about all the throwaway animals, the non-glamorous creatures that live in and amongst us. Pigeons and rats and mice, and fantastic chapter on cockroaches, and a bit of their natural history, a bit of their adaptive biology, and just really a personality view of them, a way to say, here's what they are. Don't dismiss them just because they're ubiquitous. A delightful book, as usual. I wish I had a copy. Okay, this next one is by David Berlinski. This is a tour of the calculus, a fairly famous popular introduction to math, in this case slightly higher mathematics than algebra or arithmetic. I am completely illiterate when it comes to math, just no ability whatsoever. Even simple arithmetic is usually beyond me. I'll either do it quickly with an air of false bravado and do it wrong, so that I will be in the position of being an adult who has another adult look at him and say, you just got 6 plus 8 wrong. And the only reason that happens is because I don't, pause and try and figure it out. Instead, the way some of you will hear, 3,300. So I guess if you're going to divide that by 5, and then you just automatically come up with the answer. It just mystifies me. And Berlinski is a very, very animated writer. This is a very good book of its type, even erudite. It didn't work on me at all, and I'm not really tempted to go back to it. I have a feeling that proficiency or even a bare competence in math is not one of those things where practice makes perfect. I have a feeling that I might be wrong about this, but I have a feeling that there's something neurochemical, something very basic in who has a feel for base 10 mathematics and who doesn't. It could be something as simple as that I was, socialized by a species that isn't base 10. It doesn't have opposable thumbs. But I don't know, whatever the reason is, I don't think I would go back to this book. I am game to embark on any new math book that I get from a publisher, but I don't think I need to be going back to old ones. And also, Berlinski himself hasn't done any favors for any likelihood of a reread, because since he wrote this book and achieved a certain amount of fame with it, he has become a science-denying crackpot. So, so I'm, on one hand, I'm saying I don't think I'm ever going to understand the calculus any better, no matter how many times I read this book. And on the other hand, I'm saying, I don't really want to spend time with the author. And then we have Hanif Qureshi's debut novel, The Buddha of Suburbia. What is this? Peterson. This is a UK mass market, I think, was the version that I scanned years and years and years ago. A coming-of-age novel, weird, surreal coming-of-age novel, but a boy who, on even days of the week is bisexual, and really well done. I know it's going to sound very hipsterish of me, but I don't think I've read any Hanif Qureshi since this that I've liked quite as much as this debut. I wrote about it once upon a time for my literary blog, Steve Reads. But I don't know how findable that is. There's a whole era of Steve Reads, I think a year or two, that I wrote on, was it Blogspot? And then I started writing Steve Reads on the literary journal that friends of mine and I started, Open Letters Monthly. And there's a vast amount of Steve Reads from Open Letters Monthly that is or is not findable. But I've tended to notice that the stuff that was on, I don't remember if it was Blogspot or not, but somewhere other than Open Letters, the stuff that predates Open Letters is tough to find. And I wrote about the Buddha of Suburbia on one of those posts. Okay, then we have a little pamphlet. This is by Christopher Hitchens. This is The Trial of Henry Kissinger. Very, very good. A very, very good little book in which Hitchens goes after Henry Kissinger for war crimes. Builds a case for war crimes, for consciousness of guilt, for violation of national and international law. A very good book. A book that will leave you angry. And that will, if you don't have an opinion on Henry Kissinger, will form one. Some of us had very formed opinions on Henry Kissinger before this book came out, but this is there's no precisely original thinking in here. But Hitchens does a better job in this book of approximating being a reporter than he ever did in any other book. He had something of a skill for it, but this is the only place where I've ever seen it, where it isn't just. Most of the other examples of his writing that he was proud to call reporting are simply ad hominem attacks, dressed up in Oxbridge prose. This is not. Wish I had a copy of this. It's a tiny little thing. It'd take you an hour to read. And you know, the irony won't be lost that Hitchens always used to say that I hope someday someone will pay me a good deal of money to write Henry Kissinger's biography, or obituary. And here it is, so many years later after Hitchens' dead, and Kissinger's still around. He's starred in a Stephen Colbert video, for Pete's sake. Why do the wicked prosper, I guess, is the question. I can't. On one hand, I am eager to see those obituaries. On the other hand, I dread them. Absolutely dread them. Good Lord. In the past, however many years that I've been writing reviews for instance, the trade journals in the book world, I've had to become very accustomed, an expert, one might even say, at the skillful deployment of euphemisms. But they have no place in an obituary of a figure like Henry Kissinger. And yet, from the New York Times on down, the obituaries will be composed almost entirely of euphemisms. The only chance that the reading world, especially the 20th century history literate reader would have had for an obituary in, for instance, the Washington Post, which is, I think, where it would have happened, that wouldn't have been euphemism, that would have had the vitriol that this character deserves, would have been if Hitchens had written it. I think you could probably have sold it to the Post, but 'tis not to be. And this next one, I don't know if this is a debut or not. This is by Jeffrey Rotter, and it's called The Only Words That Are Worth Remembering. I want to keep in mind, my services are available to come up with titles for your books 24 hours a day with no charge. But this is still an excellent book. Fantastic book. Set in a near future America. So it's a dystopian novel, but it's not, thousands of years and 3 atomic wars later. It's just right down the road, in which astronomy and astrophysics in which the country, America, is fractured and fragmented in terms of leadership and also philosophy. And the science literacy and the science denial that we see now in 2022 has, by the time of the setting of this novel, reached fixed proportions so that no one believes in astronomy. No one believes in astrophysics. It's not that they don't know it. It's that they know these things exist as disciplines and they just don't believe them. They believe they're false. They believe they're deceptive. And in that world, suddenly a bunker is opened up with what seems to be functional spacecraft in it. And the government agencies that are inextricably now the same as advertising and corporate agencies need to find out if the craft they've found works, and for that they need a family. They need to draft a family to do it. It's a weird book. I've never read a novel quite like it, and I very much enjoyed how it was done. I believe that I wrote about it. I think I wrote about quite a few books on our Library of the Lost today, but finding it, I will leave links to as many things as I can find. That's a problem with my stuff, with some of my stuff, is that a lot of it is easy to find. Mainstream venues, those aren't going anywhere. Open Letters Monthly, that's not going anywhere. Open Letters Review, especially, is ongoing and not going anywhere. But there's been a lot of other stuff too. Friends of mine have pointed this out over the years, over the decades. They've said, good Lord, you've reviewed a lot of books. I have, indeed. This next one was a self-published historical novel that I believe came to me when I was the U.S. and worldwide indie editor for the Historical Novel Review. And this is Luckbringer by Nick Brown. an extremely good historical novel. This is a perfect example. It's set in 5th century Athens. The raw, tempestuous relationship between an older man and a younger man, his luck bringer. And it's a perfect example of what I'm always complaining about, what I'm always warning people about, warning myself about, which is that thanks to the enormous proliferation of indie books out there that are professionally edited, they're professionally formatted, they have a lot of them, in this case, great covers, they have great ideas, they span the whole infinitude of fictional creation, just to talk about fiction. Thanks to that proliferation, there's no chance that any of us can catch all of the really good stuff that's out there. If I were to abandon the mainstream publishing world completely and only read indie books, I still couldn't catch more than a fraction of it. And this is a perfect example. This, as far as I know, Luckbringer never got a mainstream contract. It might still exist. I mean, thankfully, most of these things begin and live and end their whole lives as ebooks. So they stick around. It may be that, unless the author pulled it, it may be that this book is still available as a download, and that would probably mean it would be cheap. But who knows about it? If it's not in bookstores and then in used bookstores, who knows about it? I can strongly recommend it. Okay, quite a different thing with this next one. Fairly well-known author. This is the Farewell Symphony by Edmund White. I believe this concludes a sort of semi-official trilogy of his, of gay fiction. Gotta have something for the gays. And takes its title from the famous Haydn Symphony, where one by one, as the musicians on stage finished their parts in the third movement, they snuff out their candles and walk off stage. So that one by one, the orchestra gets smaller and smaller. A little bit of a macabre metaphor there, and Edmund White milks it for all it's worth. I remember this is a fairly sizable book, and I think this is an author who does better the bigger his books are. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I would probably download it. I don't think I would want to add it to what I want to be a steadily diminishing collection of hardcover novels. This next one, this author, if you don't know this author, you really should make his acquaintance. You really, really should. This is The Axe by Donald Westlake. Donald Westlake is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. There's no author quite like him. I'm amazed that he has flown completely under the radar of, for instance, the Dude Bro readers, since he ticks all of their boxes. He's not a Dude Bro author, but he ticks. They would love him. They would never know that he's not a Dude Bro author. And this is the story of a washed-up middle management schlub who is fired from his job. He's made redundant from his job, and after a while, it occurs to him that the people who have his exact set of qualifications in his region are comparatively few. There are only about 5 or 6 people who could do the job that he is applying for. It's that kind of specialized. And so he decides to kill them. He decides that if he kills them one by one, he increases his chances of getting a job. Just about the most American premise for a book you can imagine. It's so delightful. But Westlake is delightful anyway, no matter what. Okay, this next one is by John Shaw. This is JFK in the Senate. This is John Shaw's study of the time that the junior senator from Massachusetts spent in the Senate before he decided to risk all the marbles, as he put it, on the presidency. There's not much there to talk about. And Shaw, bless him, he goes at it with a passion. He tries to talk about all that there is to talk about. I reviewed this book when it came out. Again, I will try to remember to leave a link down below. The review sticks out in my mind because an old friend of mine from the Massachusetts State House here in Boston read the review, and the next time we met, I think it might have been at the Brattle Bookshop, the next time we talked, he said, "Yeah, I read your piece on the Shaw book." I said, "Oh yeah? What'd you think?" And he said, "That piece is the reason why there ought to be a federal legislation for you to review every new JFK book. Now, you don't have to do the crap. You don't have to do the assassination, conspiracy, nut jobs. But every single new study of this guy that comes out, you should review." I said, "Well, that sounded almost like a compliment." And he said, "Shut up." So I gather at least one old State House crony liked my review. Certainly, I've heard over the years that the tone of my reviews when it comes to writing about this particular historical figure is not the same as the tone in other stuff that I write. I don't know how true that is, but again, if I can remember to find the link, I will leave it down below. Okay, then we have another. This is also Boston oriented. Sorry, that's not intentional. I'm grabbing these things at random. This is by Alex Beam, who is a really good writer and a heck of a guy. And this is called Gracefully Insane. This is his study. I think this did well. This is his study of McLean's. You just say McLean's to Boston people of a certain age, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. Vast campus and gorgeous buildings. The campus was designed by Olmsted. And it was a giant sort of compound for people who were mentally ill, who were mentally impaired. I forget the exact anachronism of the term that McLean's used to use, mentally unstable or something like that, or enfeebled. One of those horrible anachronistic words from the 1940s that it's carved on marble, so you can't get rid of it, but you wish you could. And Alex Beam goes through the whole history of the place and what it was like at all of its different stages. Of course, quite a few fairly famous literary figures went to McLean's at one point or another. Terrific book, absolutely terrific. I've never seen it used, but this one time. But I strongly recommend it. Oh, I definitely recommend this next one too. Great big honking thing. You'd have to want to read history of this period. But if you do, it doesn't get any better than this. This is the great Donald Keene, and this is the Emperor of Japan, Meiji and his world. Big, fat study of the emperors of Japan in what became the twilight of their power. A lot of you will have read, I forget the name of the author, but there was a big, fat biography of the Emperor Hirohito. You have to read this too. I mean, that Hirohito biography, I'm sure you know the one I'm talking about. It's got a black and white photo on the cover. I'm blanking on the author's name, but it's an absolutely terrific book. And this is too. This is an amazingly detailed study. I keep waiting to encounter a hardcover of this at the Brattle Bookshop. The only things that I've ever seen when I see it there are trade paperbacks, and I know it's a heavy enough book. It's like 800 pages that I know that a trade paperback won't hold up. Okay, all right. Then we move from the historical study of the Meiji Dynasty to "Can't Hardly Breathe" by Gina Showalter. Contemporary romance, as you can see. This isn't even really a contemporary cowboy romance. This is just Gina Showalter can do no wrong. So no matter what she does, whether she's writing supernatural romance or just the two hottest kids in town hooking up on the roof of a car, whatever it is, they're always going to be good. I don't remember many details about this, but I'm sure that if I started rereading it, it would all come flooding back to me. I know that I enjoyed it. I don't think I've ever read anything by Gina Showalter that I didn't enjoy. Okay, all right. We'll finish up with a classic. This is actually a classic of a dubious kind. This is Stephen Herrera. This is a new edition of his book, Bear Attacks, Their Causes and Avoidance. Many was the year where if you went to any pertinently located national park, this thing would be for sale. Often in cabins and whatnot, you would find a much thumbed used copy of this. This has lots and lots of valuable information about bear attacks, because if you're in bear country, that is a possibility. That is always a possibility, and you have to take it into account. You just do. You'd be foolish not to. You have to take precautions, and they boil down to knowing what you're dealing with. Bear attacks, their causes and avoidance. It all boils down to knowing what you're dealing with. In almost all cases, anywhere in the world, the key thing to do when you are in bear country is to familiarize yourself with the two kinds of bears you might encounter. There are black bears and there are grizzly bears. And there's no good going by color, despite what black bears are called. Grizzlies can be brown so dark that it looks black, and black bears can be golden. So color is not the issue here. Instead, you want to look for three things, physical characteristics that distinguish these bears. Grizzly bears have a dished face. They have a prolonged snout and then a curved forehead, whereas black bears, the head slopes right back, sort of like a really big weasel or something like that. So the face will give it away right away. Also, grizzly bears have a hump. This is a grizzly bear, for instance, on the cover. Grizzly bears have a hump caused by the confluence of their gigantic shoulder blades right behind their head. Black bears don't have that. Black bears, their back is completely smooth, like their face. And the third physical trait is that grizzly bears are much bigger. They tend to be, they can start at 30% bigger. They can go to more than twice as big as a black bear. Some big grizzly bears are freakishly big. And that's what you want to know right away. That's what you want to concentrate on when you go out into bear country, is what kind of bear are you most likely to encounter. Black bears are far, far more common than grizzly bears. If you have been hiking pretty much anywhere in America, except Hawaii, you have probably been in black bear country. Grizzly bears, their range is more limited, and also the times when you will encounter them are more limited. And the reason why it matters is because your behavior should be different from one kind to the other. Black bears are much smaller than grizzly bears, and they don't want anything to do with you at all. And now, chances are you're not going to encounter a bear, even in bear country. Bears, just as a general rule, don't want anything to do with humans, nor do any other wild animals. There is no species of animal anywhere on Earth more universally reviled by the rest of the living world than humans, not even skunks. Bears usually don't want anything to do with you, and they'll usually know you're around long before you'll know they're around. So you won't usually. It's extremely unlikely that you will have a bear encounter of any kind. I know people who have been hiking for 40 years. I've never encountered a bear. But if you do, your behavior and the causes of bear attacks and the avoidance of bear attacks largely is determined by what kind of bear you encounter. Black bears don't want anything to do with you. And if they do encounter you, they're more than likely going to turn on their heels and run. What you should do if you encounter a black bear is stand your ground, make noise, but not confrontational noise. I actually was with some people once who started growling at a bear. You don't want to do that. You don't want to ask for trouble. But, in a loud but smooth and non-raw, firm voice, just say the typical thing now in hiking groups is to say, hey bear, hey bear. Let the bear know that you know the bear is there by speaking to it. None of its normal prey animals do that. So speak to the bear calmly but firmly, consistently. Don't fall into silence. Don't lapse into silence. Make sure that the bear knows you're there, but under no circumstances look the bear in the eye. Do not make eye contact. Even with a black bear, do not make eye contact. And stand your ground, making yourself fairly big. If you do that with a black bear, almost certainly the black bear will yield, will turn and run. They don't want anything to do with you, so they will almost certainly turn and run. And if you encounter a grizzly bear, I'm tempted to say if you encounter a grizzly bear, you should say your prayers and prepare to meet your maker. And when you meet your maker, prepare for your maker not to recognize you. But that isn't right. That isn't fair. It doesn't purport with my own experiences. I have encountered grizzly bears many times in the wild, and I'm still here. Grizzly bears are a very different thing. Some of the advice is the same. Again, you want to make sure to talk to the bear. Don't yell, don't scream, especially don't scream. Don't make any kinds of noises that can be mistaken for a wounded animal. But firmly, steadily, in maybe a slightly elevated than conversational tone. Hey, bear, I'm here, bear. The path is yours, bear. No problems. We're not bothering you, bear. Grizzly bears, normal prey animals, don't talk to them. And that's good. You want to distinguish yourself from those normal prey animals. Again, as with black bears, absolutely do not look the bear in the eye. Absolutely do not do that. That is a territorial challenge. The bear isn't going to care anymore. The one thing you want to avoid with black bears, it's not so much a problem, but it can happen. Just here in New England, across state lines, a guy was killed by a black bear. Black bears tend to be a problem only in two cases. If you encounter a sow with children, with cubs, she might get extra defensive. she might not even pay attention to whether or not you're a legitimate threat. She might just act that way. And the other, even rarer case is if you encounter an adult black bear who's old or infirm or who's had a tooth infection of some kind and really is really hungry and desperate and can't take on prey that can fight back or run away. That's extremely, extremely rare. But even so, in the case of a black bear and in the case of a grizzly bear, the one thing you don't want to do is trigger automatic responses. Then you're your own worst enemy if you do that. And one thing that will trigger an automatic response in a bear, two of them that you're going to be tempted to do right away, that you shouldn't do. One is to look the bear in the eye. Don't do that. That triggers an automatic response of confrontation. And two is to run, to turn tail and run. You cannot outrun a bear. If you think you can because they're big and pudgy, you are dead wrong. You, on a horse, could not outrun a bear. You cannot outrun a bear, so don't try. If you turn and run, the bear, even if it was originally intended to let you go, to not care, if you run, you trigger an automatic response to chase and take you down. And that's not something you want to do. But with a grizzly bear is a lot less likely to turn and run from you. They also don't want to encounter you most of the time, but grizzly bears have a much higher propensity than black bears to be homicidal maniacs, and they're much bigger than black bears and far more dangerous. And so with a grizzly bear, as with a black bear, you want to talk to the bear and you don't want to make eye contact with the bear. But unlike with a black bear, you can't stand your ground. You can't expect a grizzly bear to yield the field, especially if it's paying you attention. That is a very, very bad situation to be in. If you encounter a grizzly bear in the wild and it's paying attention to you instead of not, then that's very, very bad. That brings a whole new set of variables into play and significantly increases your danger. Significantly. What you want to do if you encounter a grizzly bear is speak to it firmly, audibly. Don't look it in the eye. And while you are doing that, you be slowly backing up. Not directly. Don't back up directly. That's only a little bit better than turning and running. Back up diagonally. Back up off the trail or into the scrub or somewhere. Get out of the bear's way. Slowly. Calmly. None of the fear that you will be feeling. None of that. Just yield the field. Now, if you're on a path and you can't go back up diagonally, still back up. But slowly. Talking the whole time. And that is really the best you can do. If the grizzly bear, that will work with a black bear. The standard approach, stand your ground, talk to them, maybe shake a can or something like that. Get it unnerved so that it runs away. That will almost always work with a black bear. If your initial approaches don't work with a grizzly bear, as they sometimes don't, sometimes the grizzly bear is paying you attention. That is very, very bad when it happens, but sometimes it does. And if the grizzly bear is paying you attention, let's say the worst possible thing happens, and it attacks. Let's say in either case, the worst possible thing happens and you suddenly realize, nothing I'm doing is working. This bear clearly wants to eat me. This bear is not curious anymore. It's now in predation mode and wants to eat me. Well, with a black bear, you should fight like hell. A black bear will be much stronger than you are, but it won't be significantly bigger than you are. So if a black bear attacks you, it's almost unheard of. But if it does, fight like hell. You could still discourage it from doing anything, from continuing. In that case, definitely raise your voice, definitely yell. Don't scream and don't run, but definitely raise your voice, definitely make a fuss. Make it the black bear feel that this is not worth it, basically, is what you want to do. You don't want to do that with a grizzly bear. If a grizzly bear shows that it is going to attack you, your best course of action is to lay down on the ground, interlace your fingers behind the back of your neck, and spread your legs into a V formation. Keep your backpack on top of your back. Maybe put more things on if you have a tent pack or something like that. Pile that on your back as well. You want to protect yourself long enough for the bear to lose interest. And you want to cross your fingers behind your neck because the bear's instinct is going to be to bite down at the base of your skull and paralyze you. Just snap your neck. You don't want that to happen. You'd rather have the bear chew on your head for a bit. Humans tend to lose sight of how durable their skull casing is. It evolved that way to protect the most amazing brain that any animal in the history of the world has ever evolved. It's pretty tough. A bear might gnaw on that for a little while and realize there's no meat here, there's no fat here, I'm going to move on. Definitely you want that to happen rather than to leave your neck unprotected. Because then the bear is likely to sink fangs into your neck in an attempt to sever your spinal cord. Even if the bear doesn't do any more than that. Even if the bear decides, well, you know, I did that, but this doesn't taste like anything I want to eat. Your life is over, except in a bed in a hospital somewhere, if you can get out. If you get out of country without the use of any of the rest of your body. To protect your neck, spread your legs into a V formation to make it harder for the bear to flip you over. Because lacking the neck, if the bear senses that, you know, that's protected or too much trouble, and if the bear is tearing at your back but isn't getting at you because you've got stuff on your back, it might want to flip you over and disembowel you. And if your legs are in a V formation, that's a little harder to do. It's still something that a grizzly bear can do easily if it wants to, but the key is, just like with the black bear, you want to give the bear the impression that this is not worth your time. You're not going to be able to win in either case. You're not going to be able to do anything like that, but you want to give the bear the feeling that this isn't worth my time. And in both cases, it won't happen with a black bear. It could happen with a grizzly bear if the bear does attack you and there is contact, as game wardens love to say. They love to use the word contact. And then you're thinking the whole time, oh my God, my life is over. But it's not. More people survive bear attacks than are killed in them, even with grizzlies. The key thing to remember, the last thing to remember, is don't get up right away, especially with a grizzly bear. If the grizzly bear leaves you alone, stops chewing on you, stops biting you or whatever, and moves off, he hasn't gone far. The first time he moves off, he hasn't gone far. He's gone just a little ways to watch you, to watch what you do. And if you get up, he'll attack again. And you won't be in any condition to resume your position. You won't be in any condition to do anything. Wait a while. All of your instincts are going to be pounding in your head to get up and run because the bear has stopped mauling you. The bear has gone away, but the bear has not gone away. All of your instincts are going to be telling you, if I don't get up and move, I'm going to bleed out. But you're not. Probably you're not. Wait until you're sure the bear is out of the area. Wait until you're absolutely sure. And then try your best to walk out. That is the gist. Sorry for the long digression. That is the gist of this book. I mean, Herrera gives all sorts of case studies. He talks about all kinds of examples that we know of, what happened, what people did wrong. A lot of advice in this book is about camp site maintenance, especially in grizzly territory, where you absolutely have to seal your food or anything that could be food. Lipstick, lip gloss, suntan lotion, anything that has any kind of an oil base. You have to seal it off and seal it away from your camp, a long way away from your camp, 200 yards at least, and up in the air. You don't want to. The Herrera has lots and lots of practical advice on not drawing bears to your campsite. There are plenty of people where that's what happens. The last thing in the world you want when you're camping, you've had a few shots of bourbon, you've told some tall tales around the campfire, everything's going fine, and then at 3 a.m, something drags you out of your tent by your feet. You don't want that to happen, obviously. So don't give the bear any reason to find you if the bear finds your stuff. A lot of campsites in America, anyway, have bear-proof containers. You don't even have to bring one of your own, but definitely check ahead. Definitely check ahead of time. If you're camping in bear country, if you're hiking in bear country, if you plan to overnight, if you plan to put out a tent and sleep, make sure you are observing campsite precautions. And that's what a large part of this book is about. Don't leave anything around that the bear can confuse with food. Because that can only lead to negative results. Better by far for the bear to find your stash of stuff and ransack it than for the bear to ransack your tent with you in it. So there you go. That's the last of our Library of the Lost. That was naturally going to go long because bears were something of my nemesis when I was hiking a great deal of the time, both in this country and in a lot of the then Soviet Union, where you don't have to worry about little bears over in the Soviet Union much. I had a slight advantage, a slight means of sleeping ease, in that I had lots and lots of dogs with me. And most bears, even grizzly bears who are, as I mentioned, homicidal maniacs, will not risk it. They won't risk confrontation with a coordinated pack of dogs. and all of my dogs were. I could keep a formation. I could make sure they knew what they were doing. No grizzly bear was going to survive that, even if not all of my dogs did, and they all knew that, and they don't, either black bear or grizzly bear, they don't typically want to engage in an encounter if they think there's a chance they won't survive it. But most of you aren't going to have big roving packs of canines with you, so definitely if you're going into bear country, there is no better volume than Herrero's if you're worried about bears. And even if you read and memorize this book, you're still going to get told a lot by the trail wardens, in the visitor center before you go up off road. They're still going to give you the lecture. And if you're smart, you'll listen. Make sure that you know what you're doing when you go into the natural habitat of a 2-ton animal with linoleum knives for fingernails. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up this before I just keep talking about grizzly bear safety. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.